Hi, my name is Sam Dillinger and welcome to My Check Engine Light TV. So today is our pilot episode and I figured what better time to talk about the check engine light than in the pilot, right? Here we are. We're going to spend some time. I'm going to go out under the hood and I'm going to show you how to create a check engine light, which can't imagine why you would want to know that, but I'm going to show you anyway. And from there, I'll show you some diagnostic information that is associated with all of the codes that can turn on the check engine light. I'll show you my scanner. I'll show you how to turn off the check engine light. That's one that I get asked quite frequently. So I'm going to show you my preferred method on how to turn off the check engine light. So let's start with a little bit of information. The current iteration of the check engine light came to us in the early 80s with the advent of modern computer controlled systems for the engine in particular. We're mostly going to focus on 96 to present and going into the future from there as well. Because in 96, the government stepped in and they regulated the type of information that the check engine light can come on for and the type of diagnostic information that it has to provide as well. And it's all based on emissions related problems. If the check engine light comes on, there has to be a certain amount of emissions data attached to it and any scanner has to be able to read it. So we're going to show you the common connector that comes with every car on the road from 96 to present. And we'll show you the scanner that plugs into it and we'll talk a little bit more about it from there. So let's go out and take a look underneath the hood. Okay, what I'm about to show you is the DLC or data link connector. We also call it the OBD2 diagnostic port. Essentially, all of those things mean the same thing. It's just where you plug in your scanner to be able to communicate with the car. Okay, as I mentioned in the previous clip about the data link connector, this is the other half of that. This is my scanner. It's a professional scanner from Mac Tools. To be honest, it's a bit more pro grade than what you're really going to need for being at home and just checking the check engine light or erasing a code if you need to, something like that. But if you wanted to get more involved in the diagnostic side of it and say read O2 sensor voltages, throttle position sensor voltage, things of that nature, you'll want to upgrade to a scanner like this. This scanner can actually even take some recordings, which can be just an absolutely invaluable tool for diagnostics. So let's plug this in and let's see what it's got here. As you see, as soon as we plug it in, it starts to power up without even having the key on. Reason for that is, to the best of my knowledge, all of the scanners on the market don't require any kind of external battery backup or external power source, anything like that. As soon as you plug it into the vehicle system, it powers up and you're ready to go. Let's turn the key on and take a look. Speaking of key on, let's talk about something really important. I wrote an article on the website called Used Car Buying Tips. And one of the things that I talked about in there is something called a bulb check. So that is when you turn the key just to the on position and all of the lights across the dash will light up. That's actually the bulb check. So the reason why that's important, especially for the check engine light, is so many times over the years, I've had a car come into the shop that had a significant drivability problem that should have kicked on the check engine light, but there was no light on. And what I ended up finding all of the time, somebody had actually taken apart the instrument cluster and taken out the bulb that's responsible for turning on the check engine light. So just be aware, just because you don't see the check engine light doesn't mean that it's not actually supposed to be on. During bulb check, it will light up. So if it's there and it's able to light, it'll do that during bulb check. Make sure you don't forget that part. Okay, so now we've got the scanner up and powered up here, and we'll go to diagnose. And these two right here is something I wanted to talk about real quick. Under here, this is where you can pick all of your different manufacturers. There's quite a few pages, as you can see. Over here, this is what I was talking about when I said we're mostly going to focus on 96 to present. In here, you just have, it's just going to retrieve the emissions diagnostic information. So it's already recognized the communications protocol and it's brought it up, and you see DTCs in this ECU. DTC stands for diagnostic trouble code, and we have 0. So at this point, everything with this car is going pretty good. Let's go out under the hood, and I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to create a check engine light, and then we'll talk about the diagnostic information that you see from that check engine light, the different types of check engine lights, and then we'll make the other one, which is a blinking check engine light. So let's go take a look. All right, so let's just go ahead and plug that guy back in. Make sure that it clips on there securely. Okay, and we're out here under the hood now. And this car, just so that you know, I didn't make this clear in the first shot, this is a 2000 Ford Mustang with a 3.8 liter V6. Okay, we're going to turn the check engine light on. You would be shocked at how difficult that actually is to do. You saw I was just reconnecting one of the spark plug wires. I actually had that wire off and drove the car around the block. Still couldn't get the light to come on. I had the idle air control valve disconnected, the throttle position sensor, the mass airflow sensor, intake air temp sensor, had all of those disconnected and the engine running with a dead misfire. And all I could get was a pending code for the idle air control valve. So what that all means is that there's a different test that it has to run for every single scenario that you can think of. Every sensor, every P code that the engine is capable of throwing, there's a different test for all of them. And the parameters for how it fails is different for all of them as well. It has to fail the test so many times, but it might only test it once for every time that you drive the vehicle. Other things, especially safety related things, transmission type things, it tests those sometimes a few times per second. So it all really just depends on what you're dealing with as to how long it can or can't take for the code to mature and actually throw the check engine light. Just be aware, as you're driving down the road, if the check engine light kicks on, something's already failed a couple of times. That's how you got that far. So let's go ahead and turn the light on. As I'm doing that, let's talk about safety for a second. You see, I'm just reaching my hands right in there like that. However, it's important to remember, I've been doing this for over 20 years. My skin has calluses that have calluses that are certified to work on cars. So don't just go and reach your hands in here. Make sure when you open the hood, just kind of tap it a little bit. Even any of the coolant hoses, anything, just tap it gently and see what the temperature is. If it's too hot, just leave the hood open for a while and let it cool down. There's just no good reason to get hurt. Also, just as a general rule, I mean, if the car's running, obviously you don't want to just stick your hands in there. However, it's a good idea to slow down and look around. I have seen animals that make nests sometimes under people's cars and stuff. You obviously don't want to stick your hand in that. So that being said, we're in a safe position here. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the engine coolant temperature sensor. And we are going to do that because that's hot. So there's a connector. And now we're going to see what it takes to actually mature the code and kick the light. What you'll see is, on the first time that we started, it's not going to throw the light. The engine is started and it's going through the idle down procedure, all of those things like it normally would when you first start the engine, but no light. And you know we have the sensor disconnected. So now we'll turn the engine off and we're going to let it sit for just a few seconds to let the capacitors discharge. And now we're going to start it again. And this time we should get a check engine light. And there it goes. So you see, that actually threw the check engine light on. Now, we're going to turn the key just to the on position. And I'm going to grab my scanner. We're going to go ahead, hook up to the car. And we're going to see what kind of code we get, what kind of diagnostic information, and we'll go from there. So we're going to go to here, and for this part, just to check the code, we'll go to the OBD2 section because it's just faster. So it's going to resolve the communication, and you'll see DTCs. We have 1, and we'll go to read codes. And there you have it. Engine coolant temperature sensor 1 circuit high, P0118. The P0118, that's the most important part. That part is what actually designates the code. The wording can be a lot different depending on where you get your information from about the code. The most important part is the P code. That's the part that is going to be the same for every type of vehicle on the road. If you have a sensor in your vehicle that can throw that code, it'll be that designation, that P code designation for every vehicle. But the wording can be different. That's why I mentioned that. So now we're going to back out of here. We're not going to erase the code because I want to go in and look at some diagnostic information. So we'll go to scan, and we'll go to Ford, go here, go to automatically search. And this stuff can take a little while too, because what it's going to do now is that it's going to see what type of computers this vehicle is equipped with and which ones that it can actually talk to. Scanners have a huge range. It's like anything else, like buying a gaming console or a camera or computer, phone, anything like that. You can get one that's $30 to $50, and you can get them that are $10,000 to $12,000. And it all depends on what you want to do with it. This one was, I believe, $500. So I have more capabilities with this, but if you're at home, you don't really need this unless you're really starting to do diagnostics. And so you'll see it went through that part first, but now I clicked on PCM, and we have what's that called? Continuous memory DTCs, right? So that means that there's one there that's active right now currently, but we already know that. We don't want to erase it yet. What we want to do is read the current data. This is actually going to show us what the sensory data and sensory readings are from the sensors that report to the powertrain control module. And as you can see, that part's also going to take a while as well. While this is loading, make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well. We're going to be having a lot of members only giveaways coming up here really soon. Actually, I'm actually going to be giving away one of these scanners right here in particular very soon, but only for people that follow us on social media and have come and seen us at the website as well. So make sure you go do that. And with that being said, we just about have this loaded up. It's like everything else. Working on cars is just hurry up and wait. It's a whole bunch of activity and then a bunch of sitting around. There we go. So using this scanner, you can see that you can go down and click here. That will populate that into the data parameters. We don't want that. We're going to come here, page down, and we're going to find the engine coolant temperature. There we go. We'll click that one and that one. And then, okay, so what you see here is 4.65 volts roughly and minus 40 degrees. And I'm actually in West Palm Beach, Florida right now. I promise you it's not minus 40 degrees today. The voltage, let's talk about that for a second. So engine coolant temperature sensor is a 5-volt sensor, and it's got a voltage that roughly operates around a half a volt. If you see it anywhere near 0, like actual 0, or anywhere near 5, honestly, really even over 4, those voltages are really reserved just for diagnosis. It's not a normal operating range. It doesn't operate anywhere from 0 all the way to 5. It's really from like 0.2 to 0.8 or 0.9 is really what you would expect to see. So if you're looking at a 5-volt sensor and you see something like that, you know that you probably have like an open circuit like what we've created out here. So we're going to turn the key off, and we're going to fix our problem and reread our diagnostic info. Okay. And we'll grab this guy here. Nice. You would not believe how many times that I have already done this and tried to plug that sensor in, and I promise you that is the first time that I've done it and got it to go right in. Love it when a plan comes together. Okay, so now, sometimes when the scanner comes back up like that, it forgot what I had selected because I turned the key off. So we'll just select those two again. And now you see we're at 1 volt and we're at 161 degrees. But now let's start the vehicle. Now you see already the voltage is starting to drop and the temperature is going to start to climb. The longer it runs, the more that'll get closer to roughly 0.4, 0.5 volts, somewhere in that range. All right, so now we're fixed. Let's move on to the next phase, which is going to be disconnecting the check engine, or I'm sorry, not disconnecting, erasing the check engine light. Believe it or not, I actually get people that ask me about disconnecting the check engine light. You can't do that. So as I mentioned in the intro, my preferred method, and I say that because a lot of older cars like this, you could disconnect the battery, and as long as the problem is gone, the check engine light will go off. If you have any type of import car, you're going to reset the radio as well. And then you're going to have to go to the dealership and get a code so that you can program the radio to turn back on. They don't always give you that for free. Sometimes they'll charge you for it. So the best method to use is a scanner. Even if it's just a code reader, that's fine. But you really need to use one of these. So we're going to come here, like I showed you before, and it just says erase DTCs. It's pretty straightforward. And we'll just go ahead and clear that guy out. And now we're going to cycle the key off, and then we're going to start it. And you can see that as soon as our bulb check completes, there's no more check engine light. So for that one, we have a successful repair. Next thing we're going to do is, we're going to move to a different type of vehicle because I want to show you a blinking check engine light. When the check engine light blinks, it's telling you that there is something actively damaging the catalytic converter system. Usually like a misfire or like a broken valve, something like that, even a broken valve spring, something crazy like that, that's dumping raw fuel right into the exhaust. This vehicle doesn't have that capability. Even if you actually broke a valve, it won't make the check engine light blink. That didn't start happening until more like mid-2000s area. So we're going to move to a vehicle that has that ability, and I'm going to show you a little bit about that too. Okay, so we have the next car, and this is where we're going to show you about the blinking check engine light. However, I was reliably informed during the intermission here that I need to address something from my last clip. I said about a broken valve. Technically speaking, what I said was correct. If you did have a broken valve, you would be dumping a lot of raw fuel into your exhaust system. However, if you broke a valve while you were driving, your engine would explode, quite honestly. So that wasn't necessarily the right thing. A broken valve spring is what I actually meant, and that's what would give you a problem in that regard. If you broke the actual head of the valve off and dropped it into the engine, you're not going any further than where you just were. Okay, now that we've addressed that, let's look at the blinking check engine light. As I mentioned, on most newer cars, it has that capability when something is damaging the catalyst. So this is actually a real easy one. We're just going to disconnect the number 2 ignition coil. Now we're going to come over here, start the car, and you'll be able to see really quickly that the check engine light is going to start blinking. Come on, don't make me look bad. Oh, there it goes. See? And so that's specifically what I was talking about. It's going to do that. And actually, you'll just have to take my word for this, but I can actually smell the raw fuel coming from the exhaust right now. So we're going to shut that off since this is my wife's car. We don't want to do anything too crazy. But that's what will happen. Like if a spark plug got a crack in it on the older vehicle that I showed you, if the spark plug wire started to go bad, something like that caused a misfire, you're going to have the blinking like that. that means you really need to get it checked pretty much right now. Even to the point that you need to get off the road and stop driving, because you may lose the ability to drive soon after it starts to blink. And that can get unsafe pretty quickly. So when you see that, you need to get to a shop. As I mentioned in the intro, one of the things that I wanted to tell you about the check engine light is how it relates to you as an everyday driver. That's one of the key things that I wanted to talk about, is the blinking. So if it's not blinking and you check it and it's got a code for, say, a large leak detected in the evap system, which is P0455, that code is something that you need to get looked at and determine what the problem is. A lot of times it's a gas cap for that in particular. Usually you'll find that someone left the gas cap loose or off, but that's not always the case. It can be other things as well. However, that's never going to affect the way that your car drives. You can drive it like that indefinitely. You would need to have your own scanner, because you need to keep checking it periodically to make sure that you haven't gotten more codes. That's one of the key problems with that. If another code comes, it's not going to blink or reset or anything else. It'll just keep the check engine light on, so you'll never know if another sensor goes bad. That's the key issue with that. However, you will not have a drivability problem from an evaporative emissions leak. So that's kind of really what I meant when I said that I wanted to tell you how it relates to your everyday life. There are certain things that really aren't critical to get fixed right now. It's not going to hurt the car, so you can save up some money. You have some time to plan around it. If that happens, you're out of time. You need to get the car off the road and you need to get to the shop pretty much right away. So that being said, let's grab the scanner and let's hook it up and see what it says. It should say P0302, cylinder number 2 misfire. Let's see if I'm right. Oh, also, I should show you that too. This one says OBD right there, right on the cover, right? So this was a cover right here inside of the vehicle. There's a fuse panel there, and there is the connector as well. Just so you know, they're in different places. Sometimes they hide them. They can be behind a cover. I've even had to take off trim panels, like in the center console on an Acura once, actually, to be able to find it. So if you can't find it right here in your feet area of the driver's section, don't panic. Just go on Google. You'll find it wherever. It's not going to be terribly difficult to find. All right. Now, we've got the scanner up. Turn the key on. You'll notice throughout the course of the video that I turn the key on and off a tremendous amount. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, if you have the scanner hooked up and you're trying to read anything, you're not going to get any information if the key is turned off. But also, every time, I've been doing this for so long, every time that I make a repair or check a setting or make a custom setting, anything like that, I'm used to cycling the key, because that will reset the system and it'll force it to test again, things like that. So that's why I cycle the key so much. All right, so let's go to diagnose here. And for this one, we're just going to come right to here. This is the most important part that we need to see. All right, see DTCs in this ECU. Read codes. P0300, that's multiple cylinder. 031 and 0302. Now, the reason why this P0301 set is because on a 4-cylinder, if the cylinder right next to the one that actually has the problem, it throws it out of balance. And that's the way that it actually measures a misfire in your engine, is by the rotation of the crankshaft and by the balance of it. So when you have one that's missing, it actually will throw it off balance enough that it can cause a misfire in a neighboring cylinder just by having that misbalance there. So that's why we have that code as well. So for this, we're going to actually, no, we cannot erase the code yet. We're going to fix it, turn the key off, because especially for something like this, you have an active code and you need the key to be off to reset. So now that we've fixed the problem, we already have the key off. Now when I turn the key back on, it will see that as being a valid reading now, as opposed to still being a problem. Turn the key back on. And it's just like what I showed you before. We're already there. We're at erase codes. So we got the key on. Erased all that. Cycle the key. Now let's start it. And you see that the light is out and it's not blinking any longer. So that is pretty much it for what we're going to talk about for the check engine light. You can see how this can relate to you in your everyday life, and a little bit more about what it is, what it's trying to tell you. It's not quite as scary as it was always made out to be. For any more questions, make sure to click the link and come check us out at mycheckenginelight.com. And especially if you have questions about anything vehicle related, come see us on the website. We can help you with things that you would just be shocked about. Come see us.